Eric walked home from the office, blending seamlessly into the rush-hour crowd. He wore the comfortable mask of doing fine. He was polite, held a decent job in accounting, and rarely complained. But underneath his calm exterior, a constant quiet war was being fought. For as long as he could remember, Eric felt a deep, nagging sense of inadequacy. It wasn't failure. It was the persistent feeling of never quite being enough, not for his critical parents, not for his demanding job, and certainly not for himself. The noise of the city was nothing compared to the restless, criticizing voice whispering inside his own mind. He knew this feeling was common, yet he felt profoundly isolated in his silent struggle. Eric's feeling of inadequacy wasn't just a personal flaw. It was a deeply ingrained belief system. Psychologists call it conditional self-worth. The idea that your value as a person depends on meeting certain external conditions: perfect grades, a high salary, constant approval, an ideal appearance. If these conditions weren't met, Eric didn't just feel disappointment, he felt he was the disappointment. Every compliment felt fleeting, like rain on glass, while criticisms cut deep and lingered. He could recall a minor mistake from years ago with perfect clarity, yet recent successes barely registered. This relentless internal scorecard was a cruel legacy, constantly moving the goalposts further away. This mindset wasn't born in a vacuum. It was cultivated by the world Eric lived in. From early childhood, the system taught him, "Your worth is your report card." Later, social media reinforced this. "Your worth is your likes and followers." Consumer culture added, "Your worth is in what you buy and how you look." Millions of people, like Eric, carry an invisible yardstick that society keeps extending, ensuring that they never quite measure up. This constant comparison and ranking exploit the brain's ancient wiring, which historically prioritized belonging for survival. Today, that wiring is exploited to fuel consumption and competition. Eric's core strategy for feeling better was to work harder, believing that if he just pushed further and accomplished more, the feeling of enough would finally arrive. Of course, it never did. This is the treadmill effect. He would get a promotion, but immediately worry about the next one. He would hit a fitness goal, only to set a harder, more grueling one the next day. The achievement brought no inner peace, only a moment of rest before the anxiety for the next pursuit took over. He was running endlessly, yet perpetually felt he hadn't arrived, exhausting himself in the process. The pain of inadequacy in Eric's life wasn't loud or dramatic. It was silent and insidious. It manifested in small, self-sabotaging ways every day. He would rewrite important emails 5 times, paralyzed by the fear of sounding foolish. In meetings, he stayed quiet, even when he had brilliant ideas, believing they weren't smart enough to share. He would compulsively scroll through social media, comparing his behind-the-scenes reality with everyone else's polished highlight reel, fueling a familiar heaviness in his chest. His struggle was visible only in his hesitation and excessive apology. The cumulative effect of this conditional self-worth was like carrying an invisible backpack full of heavy stones. Each stone was a critical belief. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not successful enough. Over years, this weight wore Eric down, making him feel constantly depleted, even when resting. He realized one day that he no longer knew who he was beyond this endless, desperate chase to lighten the load by proving his worth. The pain had not just wounded his self-esteem, it had started to erode his very sense of self, leaving him feeling fundamentally lacking. One night, reading an article, Eric hit a profound intellectual truth. The feeling of never being good enough is not proof that you are broken. It's proof that you are human in a system that profits from your doubt. This was a paradigm shift. He realized the system selling him perfection was the same one profiting from his insecurity. Neuroscience offered hope, suggesting the neural pathways reinforcing self-criticism were adaptable and could be rewired towards self-compassion. This realization provided the first small crack in his conditional self-worth. The pain was systemic, not a personal defect. The real journey began with recognition. Eric learned that you cannot change what you refuse to name. He started by simply admitting to himself, "Yes, I struggle with feeling like I'm not enough." This act of naming the struggle brought the monster out of the shadows and instantly diminished its power. He realized that his suffering was not unique. It was the collective crisis shared by 8 out of 10 people. This shift in perspective from "I am broken" to "I am having a human response to a broken system" lifted an immense layer of shame. Eric started practicing a crucial tool: self-compassion. This meant literally speaking to himself as he would to a beloved friend. When the internal critic whispered, "You idiot, you missed that deadline," he consciously rephrased it. "That was hard, but I did my best, and I'll learn from it." Neuroscientists confirmed this was neurological medicine. Kindness towards the self actually rewires the brain for better emotion regulation. It was challenging, feeling sentimental and unnatural at first, but Eric persisted in interrupting the old, destructive neural loops. Another vital practice Eric adopted was reframing. This wasn't about toxic positivity or ignoring mistakes. It was about consciously changing how he interpreted events to build resilience rather than shame. Instead of interpreting a setback as, "I failed because I'm fundamentally incompetent," he would reframe it as, "I didn't succeed this time, but I gained valuable knowledge I lacked before." This small shift in language slowly changed his reaction to challenges, transforming them from identity threats into neutral data points for future growth. Eric came to understand a philosophical truth: you don't have to earn your worth. His value was not conditional. It was intrinsic, existing simply by the fact of his being. He thought of a newborn child who possesses infinite value before achieving anything. The only thing that buried this truth in adults was the layered comparison and expectation imposed by culture. He started rejecting the need for external validation, realizing his identity was not tied to his performance or status, but to his simple, flawed existence. To reorient his measurement of value, Eric started a practice called the Enough List. Every evening, he wrote down 3 things he did that made him enough that day. These were not accomplishments, they were acts of being. I listened patiently to my friend. I noticed the sunset. I got out of bed even when it was hard. These quiet markers replaced the loud demands of his accounting spreadsheet. This practice slowly retrained his brain to find value in presence and character, not just in external metrics and achievements. Eric realized his comparison habit was a major fuel source for inadequacy. He instituted a comparison detox, choosing 1 day a week to intentionally step away from social media and comparison-driven advertising. Studies supported this, showing that short breaks from such platforms significantly boosted self-esteem. The goal was to give his nervous system a genuine break, preventing his brain from unconsciously pitting his real life against the curated highlights of others. This break was difficult at first. The urge to scroll was strong, but the resulting peace was profound. Eric's healing wasn't a sudden fix. It was a daily practice, less like flipping a switch and more like tending a garden. Some days, he forgot the new practices, and the old critical voice would be louder than ever. He learned to accept that he wouldn't silence the voice completely, but he could learn to live alongside it differently. His goal shifted from achieving perfection to cultivating presence. He began to find freedom in the question, can I allow myself to be enough right now as I am? This continuous striving from a place of curiosity, not desperation, defined his new path. Eric finally understood that the weight of never being good enough was never his to carry. His worth was never something to be earned, but something to be remembered. The pursuit of more was an endless race designed to keep him running. Freedom arrived when he realized he could simply step out of the chase. He was not his achievements, his failures, or his comparisons. He was something far deeper and more worthy than any scorecard could measure. The pain began to soften, the chase slowed, and life, in all its imperfect beauty, began to feel a little more like home. He was enough. He always had been.